Hi, I'm Neil Bergman.
And I'm Hayley Bergman. Over the last 10 years, we've helped thousands of fitness professionals to get qualified, learn with simplicity, and coach clients with confidence.
We're the first to say that learning and being a FITPRO doesn't have to be hard work, and that with the right structure, support and resources, you can become a confident and knowledgeable fitness professional that is dedicated to more.
So how do you learn, qualify and kickstart as a FITPRO? This is the FITPRO Sessions Podcast with Parallel Coaching.
Stop comparing yourself to other FITPROs.
Season 9, Episode 2, welcome.
And I am super looking forward to today's FITPRO session because I know I've been guilty of it. I know Hayley's been guilty of it. And I know probably everybody listening has made comparisons to themselves, to others and vice versa. And it's one of the biggest problems I see in the fitness industry that's stopping us from taking meaningful action towards our goals.
And also stopping us from feeling confident, stopping us from feeling like we have no self-doubt and that we can actually do this, which means that then people end up stopping. They, like you say, stop taking action,
or don't
they
even
don't get
start
started
completely
as a FITPRO because they're so busy comparing themselves to other people and making themselves feel really low down and therefore not wanting to take the action.
So as we go through today's podcast, we're going to give kind of 3 stories or analogies, metaphors. I'm not sure which one it would be. We're going to talk about the fishbowl scenario. We're going to make comparisons in here to Maltesers, and then we're going to talk about the comparison is the thief of all joy.
Yeah, and how staying in lane is really important.
Before we get going into the nuts and bolts of today's episodes, I want to give a personal invite to you, yes, you listening right now, okay, for you to come and join us on FITPRO Sessions. So throughout season 9, we're going to bring you guys on, learners, guest speakers, to talk about any topic that you think will bring value and relevancy to FITPRO Sessions.
Now, if right now, as soon as Neil said that, you went, oh, I would love to come talk, but I won't be as good as anyone else. I won't be as good as Neil and Hayley. I won't be as good as that.
Stop comparing yourself completely.
Because that's exactly the thing that stops us from trying something that's new, something that's maybe a little bit of a challenge, something that is scary. And actually, sometimes you've got to do something that's a little bit scary or a little bit challenging or out your comfort zone. But you can only do that if you're in the moment focusing on what you can give and what you can do rather than worrying about what anyone else is thinking or comparing.
Completely. And you might think, what would I talk about? I've not got anything interesting to talk about. So here's a couple of examples. We're going to bring one person on and we're going to talk, one learner on. We're going to talk about mental health and bipolar because this particular learner has suffered for it for all her life. And so we're going to talk about a topic which has potentially a lot of stigma behind it, a lot of unknowns behind it, and talk about it from a FITPRO's perspective that has mental health and bipolar.
Yeah, we're also going to talk to another learner about the interview process. So if you're a FITPRO going for an interview at a gym, what would you do? Like, what is expected of you? What you could expect.
Maybe you've had a previous career for 15, 20, 30 years and you've kind of jumped ship and gone, do you know what? There's this thing inside me that I just want to become a fitness professional. I want to become a Pilates or a yoga instructor or a personal trainer, or I want to run boot camps out in the park. And you've made this transition from kind of your past life to this new life, so to speak, and we could talk about that. So it doesn't matter how, don't sit there or walk, whatever you're doing right now, listening to this thinking, I've got nothing to talk about. Send us an email, so it's info@parallel-coaching.com, or reach out to us on our social media and just say,
I'll put a link with this video and podcast as well, so you can just message us directly.
But I really want to make season 9 more about you and bring you guys on and make it more about the tribe of parallel coaching.
Yes, that's exactly it. And because also everybody really loves hearing from other people. So you might think yours is that what I've got to talk about isn't interesting. Nobody would be interested in that. It's not very exciting for other people. But they love hearing other stories from other FITPROs, which kind of links to the comparison thing we're talking about.
Completely.
Because it's not so that they can compare to you, but they can take inspiration from, which I find really interesting. And it also means that you're not in a place of going, oh, look how well they've done.
Well, let's start there then, because that's slightly off the topic of our notes. But comparison is seen as a negative thing.
Yeah.
Yet you've just framed comparison in a really nice way.
Ah, silver lining.
No silver lining, but you have. Like, that's my first question is, why does comparison have to be the thief of all joy? Why can't we make healthy comparisons that allow us to, it goes back to a previous episode where we talked about self-efficacy.
Yes.
In terms of looking at other people's experiences. So if we brought you onto the FITPRO Sessions show now, and you talked about your journey from a past career and how you've gone through learning and you've enjoyed it, and now you've got a few clients and you're just getting going and kick-starting, you're providing comparative evidence that it's possible.
Yeah.
And that is crucial to boost someone's self-efficacy. Yet comparisons are seen as a negative thing.
Yes. Well, something I remember our coach telling us many a time. So Tony Robbins would always turn around and say, success leaves clues.
Yes.
And I remember this, like, you can't follow those clues without a comparison or without a look at other people. If you literally have your head down, then you don't know what other people have done.
That's really funny.
Successful.
Obviously, this is an audio show, so Hayley's like covering up her eyes and looking down.
Yeah, well, you can't see that. But now Neil's explained it in a narrative way along
Completely.
the top.
I'm gonna be the narrator as we go through. Amazing.
Like when you do that annoying audio description.
Yes,
on the TV.
on BT, yeah, completely. Anyway, carry on, let's go for it. We digress. Hayley has digressed.
I have no idea what I was saying.
You were saying that success leaves clues.
So success leaves clues, and you only can follow the clues of other people's success if you're willing to look at other people in a positive way in terms of their success and actually say, well, yes, they might be, in my opinion, the most successful, but how can I also do that?
How can I replicate it? Now,
not
here
use that
links
comparison to pull you down, but use that comparison to follow.
to pull you up.
Yeah.
But here's the thing: is we're now going to select. This works so nicely with our first
doesn't
metaphor. So imagine two fish bowls.
Yeah.
Okay, and the image of this is actually on the front cover of our blog. And on the front cover of the podcast, you'll see it. So you've got two fish bowls. In the left-hand fish bowl would be maybe you, okay, or I. It doesn't matter which fish bowl you're in. You just recognise that you are a fish in a fish bowl with a certain amount of water, okay. And then in the other fish bowl, you've got
There's no perspective of whether that's a small fish or a large fish or a whatever fish until you compare it to the second fish bowl, which next to it now has another fish tank, exactly the same.
It's that same size, same amount of water, but with the fish that is fully outgrown that fish bowl.
Yeah.
And so here's the thing, if success leaves clues, what we want to be making sure, in my opinion, is that we're making comparisons or being led by somebody that is the appropriate size fish in the appropriate size tank. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and sometimes we can put those people up on a pedestal as well, of like, oh, well, they're a big fish, therefore they must be a good fish.
But they could be a big,
really happy
but they
and
could
confident.
be a big fish in a very small pond.
Yeah, and not like it.
Yeah,
exactly.
So we could be making comparisons, and I've done this before. I've compared myself to others. Yet when I've dug a little bit deeper, I found out that person or the person I'm comparing myself to, or the company I'm comparing myself to, is a very big fish in a very small pond, or a very small fish in a very big pond, and actually they're making comparisons back to me.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh God, it's a bit of a mind-baffling thing, isn't it?
So for me, it's a linking thing, isn't it? Like, we see something that, let's say they're big. Like you had a good example earlier when you were saying about James Smith has a lot of followers. I would say he is a big fish in the fitness industry world.
Yeah, completely. Okay, so James Smith has got 25,000 followers as of today.
I don't even remember the number. I can't remember these.
And we could make comparisons, and we could clearly say, well, he's a fitness professional. He's an online fitness professional. He's got hundreds, if not thousands of clients. He's helped potentially tens of thousands of clients across the last number of years as well.
But if you look at that just from a surface point of view, just that bit before you carry, like just that surface bit, you might look at your followers and go, I've only got 14, or I've only got 100.
A couple of hundred.
And then compare it to the 800 and something thousand, and you're literally at the point going, well, he's a big fish, therefore he is better than I am, or he is happier or more confident than I am.
But it's just an arbitrary number.
It doesn't necessarily relate. So the size of the fish doesn't necessarily mean that the fish is any happier or any more content or any more confident
or have the coaching attributes or characteristics that you don't yet have or do have.
And he might be looking back at you and going, God, I loved it when life was a bit simpler and I could actually just have a cup of tea on my front doorstep.
Yeah,
or I can walk down the street without somebody shouting at me.
But what I do love about James Smith, from what I've seen and what I've come to like learn about him is the humble nature of that, because he also recognizes that and he's clear that it took many years in order to get that arbitrary number of 825,000 followers. So what we don't see when we make comparisons, direct comparisons from, let's just say Thursday, what is it today, the 10th of June or the 11th of June, okay, to another person on the exact same day at time. What we don't see is for many years and months of work, of hard work, of time, energy and effort behind that to get to their current status. So we're making comparisons when in fact two things cannot be compared, okay? Because let's take James Smith or any other influencer or anybody else we see as a bigger fish in the pond or a big fish in the fitness industry. What we're doing is we're making comparisons when those comparisons can't be extrapolated. They can't be made.
Don't need to be made.
They don't need to be made.
And yet like what we said about success leaves clues, you will still learn stuff from them in the same way they could still learn stuff from you. And those successes are the things that will leave the clues.
Yeah,
but
completely.
it doesn't mean that what you do is wrong or bad because it's smaller.
It's in the comparison that we make to other people that it can either pull us up or it can drag us down.
Yeah.
Now, if we're making comparisons and saying, right, this person's got that many followers or that many clients and I haven't got that many clients and that many followers, then you're almost setting yourself up to fail and have those comparisons that lead you on a self-perpetuating cycle down and have low self-efficacy, low self-esteem, low self-confidence and stop you from taking action or even starting in the first place and questioning, who am I to do this? Am I good enough? I don't have enough knowledge. When in actual fact, those comparisons could equally be made, but they don't necessarily have to pull you down in that self-perpetuating cycle. You could recognize that, for example, James Smith is on, let's just say he's been in the industry for 10 years and that's 3,600 days. Is that correct?
Yes, it would be.
So he's on day 3,000, let's call it day 4,000,
like,
and you might be on day 4.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah,
you're
you
still personal trainers, you're still fitness professionals, you're still coaches, but you're making comparisons to someone's day 4,000 to your day 4.
Yeah, and it can't be compared.
But if we did go back to James Smith and we went, right, what was he doing on day 4? Probably very similar to what you're doing on day 4.
Yeah, nice. Then it's more of a useful comparison. Only compare someone's day 4,000 to somebody else's day 4,000. I like that. That's also like, I was thinking about in any career, if you compared somebody that was a teacher on their very first day of teaching compared to someone that's been teaching for 30, 40 years, it would be totally different.
But equally, like, let's just look at that. You could say, right, again, maybe this is a derogatory comment, but you could take somebody that's been in as a teacher for say 35 years and say, well, you are incredibly confident, you are comfortable standing in assemblies in front of large groups of people, you've become head of a team, you are very good at all the spectrum of teaching. Yet you could turn around and say, well, maybe you are a bit stuck in your ways, stuck in your practice, a little bit stagnant. Maybe you've not done up-to-date CPD. But then we can make comparisons back, and the 35-year career teacher could turn around to the brand new teacher and go, you've got the latest knowledge, you are thirsty, you are hungry for
you're fresh out.
Like you've got that energy, that buzz that I once had. So
there's benefits on both sides, right?
Completely. We always look at the comparisons going up, but we very rarely as a society look at the comparisons coming back down.
Yeah.
Like you said a minute ago, at what point does James Smith go, do you know what? It was actually really nice having, 4,000 followers or 40 followers or
running this boot camp or doing this one-to-one PT.
The problems are very different, right?
Yeah.
Completely.
Yeah.
So if we were to compare our problems right now, they're very different to the problems of the person we're comparing them to.
Yeah.
Take for example, any business that has been going, that you would see or compare as successful. Yeah. You might go, well, let's look for a body coach. He started off as a boot camp in Surbiton with, a handful of clients, and now he's got clients all over the world. His problems are very different. So we're making comparisons to his confidence, comparisons to his coaching, comparisons to how he operates, yet we aren't making comparisons to the level of problems that person has in his world.
Yes. Yeah. Incomparable.
Completely.
Yeah, nice. I'm going to turn comparison on its head for the next
part. Go for it.
So when you now look at it, instead of looking at something where we had two little fish tanks and they were two very different sized fish, you could clearly look at it and see the differences, right?
Yes.
Now,
I like this. Yeah, keep going.
Now, what I would like you to do is imagine you are a Malteser.
This is not very hard for Hayley to imagine herself as chocolate.
Wow, nice that you focused on the chocolate part.
Yeah, completely.
So, imagine yourself as a Malteser. Essentially, you are keenly aware of the fact that you've got all these different like crumbly biscuit holes inside. You're aware of everything that's inside you as like gaps, flaws, problems. These are your crispy inside, little bit of roughness, which is your Malteser like biscuity bit, right? But then on the outside is this lovely, smooth chocolate finish that to the point that when you look at another Malteser, all you can see is like, God, they're so smooth, chocolate all over. I bet you that chocolate runs the whole way through and they don't have any crumbly biscuit inside.
If you didn't know what a Malteser was,
if you didn't know that they were also a Malteser.
It's almost disappointing, isn't it? Because
really?
Because you could be like, if you looked at it and think like the chocolate's going to run all the way through, and you bite into it, you're like, I was really expecting the chocolate to run all the way through.
Yeah, exactly. There are those, but I can't remember what they were called.
Poppets.
Oh, they're toffee inside.
They are. So here's the equal analogy, because I was going to go with Poppets. Maybe, hopefully you know what Poppets are, but they're very similar to Maltesers, but you don't necessarily know what's going to be on the inside, whether it's going to be a crunchy, hollow one or a really chewy, toffee one.
Or a mint one or whatever. Yeah.
And so from the outside, they all appear the same, but it's not until only that only that Malteser knows what's on the inside.
Yeah, and that's the problem is that when we can do comparisons, we will look at someone else's from their external perspective. So we just see the external that they are putting out to the world. And everybody, including us, no matter how many flaws we have a slightly different exterior.
Yeah.
It's only slightly different, but it will be like this nice, smooth, chocolatey exterior on the outside.
It's like a fingerprint. We all have a fingerprint, but they're all slightly different.
Yeah. Whereas inside, there are flaws. There are these things that you would say are your things that don't work for you, or that are challenges or problems or hang-ups that you have, or whatever it might be. These are all our deep internal flaws. And just because somebody looks all silky smooth and chocolatey on the outside doesn't mean that they don't have any flaws on the inside.
Completely.
Basically.
But it's those flaws that make you. And yet making comparisons potentially exposes some of our thoughts, feelings and emotions of those flaws or those internal beliefs, those limiting beliefs, those values that either get us going or stop us in our tracks.
Yeah.
That make you the beauty you are. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly.
Without that, we'd all have the same ego, and therefore we would probably all end up in a some kind of like mental institute whereby we wouldn't know how to make comparisons to each other, and we'd be like, that person's the same as me, that person's the same as me, there's lots of people just like me all over the world. And so actually having lots of different egos and having lots of different flaws is actually the beauty that makes us who we are.
I like that. That's
do you know
really
what I mean?
nice. Yeah, I do like that. And it kind of shows it, doesn't it, that you can't just see it from what it is on the outside.
Yes.
And know that there are other things going on inside. Like if you take, for example, your favourite sporting person. I'm rubbish with sport, but Neil will have an example, I'm sure.
Well, let's go with surfing, and let's keep it with Kelly Slater.
Okay, well, you might turn around and say, right, I've seen him, like he lands every single surf that he does. He always gets a really good barrel, like you always see the best bits. But what you didn't see were all the different trials that took to get to that. All the times he fell, all the times he fell absolutely horrendous paddling back out, or whatever it might be. All the legs he's broken.
The number of reps. It's the same. Let's use the analogy of going into the gym. The first time a new person, a beginner, goes into the gym, they first go on to, let's say, a chest press or a dumbbell pec fly or whatever it might be. And they go, actually, the first few reps looked a bit clunky. They lacked coordination, balance, agility, and all of those. But it's not until they've practiced of many repetitions of frequency, intensity, type and time, they go, do you know what, the training age, the training history, they now have that ability to just go in there and knock these reps out. Because we're making comparisons of the finished glazed Malteser without recognizing the countless number of reps that have to go into that to make the amazing glazed Malteser.
And also, when you bite into a Malteser, And like all the adverts, you know about them being really light and you can like blow them with a straw and stuff.
Yeah.
The best thing about the Malteser is the fact it's made of biscuit and not chocolate the whole way through.
Oh, that's pretty powerful. Which goes back to like the ego of like we've all got to have all these different egos. Here's the thing though, like the moment you learn to believe your limiting beliefs or these flaws or this like crumbly interior of the biscuit, that's when you learn what you hear yourself say. So if you're saying to yourself on a constant basis, I'm not good enough or they're better than me, whatever the internal chatter is, you're going to slowly start to believe that. And that's when it becomes an issue, because you could have this real fire in your belly of like, I really want to go out and help this type of person. I really want to go out and set this boot camp up. I know I'm capable of it. I know I'm worthy of it. I know that if I could just get past X, then I know it would all work out. But it's that X we're not allowing ourselves to get past because we're making all these comparisons and learning what we hear ourselves say. And we're saying on a frequent basis as FITPROs, I'm not good enough. I don't think I've got enough knowledge.
I'm not as good as them.
I'm not as good as them.
Who would listen to me?
Who would listen to me? Well, actually, like the person you're making comparisons to, go back however many days in their repetitions that got them to where they are now. I guarantee they had the same internal chatter and probably still do.
Yeah, well actually we were listening or watching the Friends reunion.
Yes.
And they were talking about their performance and they were saying that they still look back on their own performance as an actor and turn around and say, well, it doesn't seem like my acting was very good. Everyone else is fantastic, but mine isn't very good. And I wouldn't see it as good. But
So
everyone else is
you've got
fantastic.
people that have been on the stage, on live stages as well, and been in the A-lister limelight for many years and been absolutely like box office hits, and yet they're sitting there on a sofa as Friends reunion 17 years later, beating themselves up with this kind of fraudulent feeling of like imposter syndrome of like, it still wasn't good enough. I still don't believe that was me.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter where you are on your journey, you're always going to experience these. It's whether or not we learn to hear,
we learn what we hear ourselves
say. And whether or not that stops us in our tracks.
And whether we're saying good things about ourselves or bad things.
Yeah, like what's stopping us? What's stopping us actually just being kind to ourselves and having a positive internal chatter? What's stopping ourselves just being kind to ourselves?
I am like this and I like that.
Yeah, completely. I do have this as part of my ego. I do have this crumbly interior. I do have this limiting belief. And that's okay. Cool, let's go.
Yeah, exactly.
It's easier said than done. I get that.
But it allows for acceptance.
But it
allows you to move forward.
Completely.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
the key.
Nice. And then part of this is all that whenever you compare, it can be the thief of all joy. And I like this as a phrase. Comparison is the thief of all joy. And I've used this many times when learners have literally been like, oh, but this person's doing that. What am I doing differently? Why is it not working for me? And just go, actually, comparison is the thief of all joy. You came into this industry because you love fitness, because you wanted to help someone else and to help lots of people. Don't now make it unenjoyable by comparing all the time.
It's funny, this is why it's not funny as in like ha. But when I've spoken to literally hundreds, thousands of learners over the last few years alone. And let's just take like one learner, for example. They've come from being a florist. Yeah. Okay, we've had quite a few florists that have come through actually. Okay. And when I've spoken to this person, they never made comparisons to other florists. In fact, they made nice alliances and as if they could help each other and they could learn from each other. And if I look at other industries, we had another person that worked in a helicopter factory. It was, literally the learners that have come through that I've spoken to over the last few years, like their backgrounds have just been incredibly interesting. And I said, I remember saying to this person, like, did you make any comparisons to other people on the shop floor there? And it was like, no, we just helped each other. And so what I've come to kind of learn to believe is in many industries where learners have come from, you don't necessarily make comparisons. Yet for some reason we get into the fitness industry, and one of the first things that kind of like boils away, doesn't just simmer, it's like fully thriving and boiling, is this comparison. And it's the thief of all joy. Yeah,
rather than actually just being there, the same as every other, like you would in your previous role.
Completely, because actually from my experience, every FitPro is comparing themselves to other FitPros, as opposed to going, how could I help you and how could you help me? Like, how could we just get on? How could we share our knowledge? And also, like, why do we even need to, at times, make a comparison at all, or even get involved with that.
Yeah. Why does it even need to be there? Because
I'll be honest, I used to make huge comparisons to other training providers, and so often now somebody will tag me in the SimSpa group, or they tag me into another thing around another training provider, and I can genuinely turn around and go, I don't know.
Yeah.
Because I don't make comparisons, but also I've taken myself out of those conversations, so I don't even become exposed to it, and I'm the gatekeeper to my mind.
And
what goes in between the right ear and left ear is completely my choice. And if I allow information to go in, I've now got to be able to deal with that emotionally, intelligently, and is that going to nurture some beliefs? Is that going to send me on a self-perpetuating cycle down or up? Now, I just want to be on the way up, if that makes sense. And I appreciate that there's going to be a self-perpetuating cycle down, but I've got to control that. So if I'm going to expose myself to that information, then I've also got to be exposed to the fact that comparisons are going to be made along the way.
And if you rewind back to, when you said early on we'd compare ourselves to other training providers, and this might be you early on now comparing yourself to other PTs, other FITPROs in your industry. Now, it doesn't do you any favours and it doesn't do them any favours, but what happens is that you spend all your time wondering and worrying, all your time, energy and effort, wondering and worrying what's happening in the next lane, what's happening in their world, rather than actually your time and effort in what you're doing and the patterns of what you're doing and what works in your world. So I remember this explicitly from, I used to do a lot of athletics when I was younger. So I used to do athletics, and they used to always say, stop looking over, else you're going to fall over.
Were you the one that fell over?
Because instead of just running, let's take 100 meters, for example. Instead of just running as hard and as fast as you could to get over the line the best you could, if you spend your time, even a millisecond, to look and see where other people are, that's energy and focus that could be going into you and your race.
Because the moment you look over into another lane, wherever your head goes, your body follows.
Yeah. And if you're doing the best you can, it wouldn't matter where anyone else is anyway. Whereas if you're not doing the best you can and you see that someone's in front of you, that might give you the spur to go forwards. Yeah. But if you're doing the best you can and all your focus is on you, in your lane, moving forwards, then it'll only ever benefit you because you're doing the best you can.
You can only do what you can do right now. Yeah. You only know what you know right now. You only have the resources you have now to use. Yeah. And it's really easy to make comparisons and say, it's all right for them because, or they've got this many followers because of that, and they've got this level of funding, and it's all right for them because they got there first, or they started out earlier. It's really easy to make those comparisons.
Yeah.
But that's time, energy, and effort focused, looking over into another lane where your head goes, your body follows, and before you know it, you're now trying to run in somebody else's day 4,000 when in fact they're just walking.
Ooh.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Because that's what's happening. They're walking on day 4,000 and you're going, well, I'm on day 40. I'm comparing myself to them, and suddenly you find yourself sprinting really hard to keep up with their walk, as opposed to going, do you know what? I appreciate where I am, what I've got, the resources I have, the knowledge I have.
Your own strengths.
And my own strengths, and that's all I can do right now, and that's okay.
Yeah, and all you can do then is compare who you are now compared to what you might have been the day before. Perfect. Or what you want to go forward to.
That would be a wicked comparison, in my opinion, to me.
And you do this a lot, because Neil does all of our social media, all of our marketing side of things. So if ever he does a post, he'll then go back and analyse and compare all of the statistics for it to see what works. But what he's comparing is his own work from an older version to a newer version, and seeing what types of tweaks changed, what types of things had a better response. So he's comparing his own work before and after.
Do you know what I really like? And it slightly it goes off on a bit of a tangent here. But quite often, when I say not often, I'm going to say a couple of times a year, we'll have a number of learners reach out to us, close friends and family, and they'll say, Neil and Hayley, you've changed. And I'm like, that's great. Because they've made a comparison to who I was just say 90 days ago or 120 days ago to who I am now. And they make the comparison, and sometimes they turn around and go it's really good, look what you've done, it's really good how you've in comparison you've changed. But equally, more often than not, they turn around and go, I don't like who you've become. And I'm like, Well, that's interesting.
Or they go, oh, you've changed.
You've
Almost
changed.
as if it's a bad thing.
A bad thing,
that you're not the
completely.
same person you were. But actually, by changing and seeing that comparison in yourself, that's the growth you were after.
Completely.
When you sat at the beginning saying, that's my goal, that's who I want to become, that's what I want to do. When someone says you change, you're like, good, that's what I was aiming for.
That's what I was aiming for.
That was my goal.
So the comparisons are within yourself. Like, even right now, I could turn around and go like, is this podcast a better version than we could have done, say, last month?
Yeah.
Okay. Or was this a better podcast? Was it better lighting, better sound? Was it well structured? Did it have a better plan in comparison to our previous podcast? Am I getting just a millimeter down the road further every time I practice a rep?
Yes.
So rather than, we all know we used to do quite a bit of running. And so within running, you've got junk miles. And I was never a fan of junk miles where you'll just go out and go, well, I'm just going to try and get more time and distance in my legs. I'm like, there's no objective, there's no real aim to that session. And so, every time I went out and did a run, I'd always think like, what was the aim? Like, what am I trying to achieve here? How does it get me closer to my end goal? And you might just improve by a millimeter, a tiny step. You might just, from the analogy of like pushing the domino over, you might just actually push the domino, but it might not tip over. It might just be the tiniest nudge forwards, and that's okay. But am I moving forward? So I've always used in all of my coaching with my clients this finishing thing of like, keep rocking only forwards.
Yeah,
like,
yes.
am I rocking forwards? Am I keeping going? Just a little bit. It doesn't need to be monumental efforts every time, every day, every rep, but was every rep useful?
Nice.
Was every repetition useful? Was every podcast that we did, was that a useful rep to get better, or was it just a junk podcast?
And I would say that can only happen if all your focus is on making yourself better the next time you do it, not spending your whole time comparing to others.
The comparison is the thief of all joy. Imagine if you compared your time, energy, and effort that you spend potentially on comparing yourself to others, and you compared that to a better version of yourself. Again, like, we could have this conversation of like, we always compare to others of where they are right now or where they were. And we could compare ourselves to where I am now to where I was yesterday. But imagine future pacing yourself and go, right, I'm here right now on June 11th, 2021. I want to make comparisons to myself on June 11th, 2022. What comparisons will be different in the future?
Yeah.
And now I could go down the whole goal setting route.
Yeah.
So we always I find we, as an industry or as an individuals, FITPROs, we make comparisons of other people and in their past. Okay, and we justify with that where we are right now.
Yeah.
So we justify our action or inaction based on a comparison to others, rather than spending that time, energy, and effort on comparing ourselves to who we were yesterday or who we want to become.
I love it.
There we go.
Which wraps up the whole idea of stop comparing to other FITPROs.
Stop comparing yourself. Only compare yourself. You don't even need to compare yourself to yourself if you don't want to.
You can do so much better with your energy and focus.
You are you, and that's all you can do.
Yeah, and I love, just to recap, we had the fish tank analogy where we had like the smaller fish in the tank, then we had the larger fish.
And
we were
recognising that
difference.
you are a fish in your own fish bowl, okay? Recognising that as you do keep rocking and move only forwards, that you will become a bigger fish, and you need to upgrade your fish bowl in order to be the appropriate size fish in your fish tank.
Hey, nice.
Okay, so you don't outgrow it.
I love that.
Okay.
And then we also
don't jump into somebody else's fish bowl because you're going to have to swim a gazillion times faster to keep up.
Yeah, nice. We also spoke about the Malteser and understanding that although we might all look the same on the outside and they might look squeaky clean for other people or smooth chocolate, on the inside we do all have our flaws.
And those flaws, those limiting beliefs, those thoughts, feelings and emotions that we perceive to be unhelpful are actually the very thing that make you who you are and give you your ego, which is identifying yourself as you.
Yeah, your personality, your ego.
Otherwise, we'd all be the same and we'd all go crazy.
Yeah,
completely.
Exactly. And then we talked about comparison being the thief of all joy, staying in lane and keeping focused on what you're doing.
Yeah, like if you're on day 40, just sprint at your day 40. Don't try and jump into somebody else's day 4000 and have to absolutely spend so much time, energy and effort just to keep up with their walking pace and you're sprinting.
And similarly, if you're sprinting, don't turn around and go, God, I'm going way too fast than them. I'll slow down. Keep going at your best.
But also, if you are sprinting and you do just look over to somebody else's lane and you spend time, energy and effort looking at it, it doesn't take very long but before your head and body follows and you find yourself in another lane again.
Or falling over.
And tripping over your feet completely.
Exactly.
So the moral of all of this, the biggest message is stop comparing yourself to others and just be yourself.
Yay! I love
Wicked.
that. And what I would love to hear is what your big takeaway has been from today, because there's been loads inside today.
Yes.
I want to know what has resonated the most. If you haven't already joined us in our Inner Circle Facebook group, there is a link alongside this video or podcast so that you can join us. And then I want to hear what your takeaway is. Just write in Season 9, Episode 2, what's your big takeaway? And I would love to hear from you in there.
And if you haven't done so already, in iTunes especially, leave us a 5-star review. We really want to push Season 9. We really want to get FITPRO Sessions out to more FITPROs. So you could either leave a review or you could share the podcast onto your timeline. You could send this via WhatsApp, via Messenger to other people. Email it to them that you think would benefit. Because today is all about comparison as a FITPRO. But actually there's a lot of messages to take. So you could send this to your kids, to your teenagers,
to a
client, because actually this appears in everybody's world. And I genuinely believe it can help way more people than just those in the fitness industry.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and if you do want to join us on our podcast, final thing I'll ask
Final call to action.
If you do want to join us on the podcast, then send us a message. The link will be with this video or podcast so that you can join us on the podcast and talk about the thing that you love most or problems that you're having as well.
Wicked. With that, we will see you bright and breezy next week. Keep rocking, only forwards till next Tuesday. See you later.
Bye.
Hi, I'm Neil Bergman.
And I'm Hayley Bergman. Over the last 10 years, we've helped thousands of fitness professionals to get qualified, learn with simplicity, and coach clients with confidence.
We're the first to say that learning and being a FITPRO doesn't have to be hard work, and that with the right structure, support and resources, you can become a confident and knowledgeable fitness professional that is dedicated to more.
So how do you learn, qualify and kickstart as a FITPRO? This is the FITPRO Sessions Podcast with Parallel Coaching.